Listener's note: today's podcast deals with issues of addiction and suicidal ideation. If you or someone you know is having any of these issues, please reach out to 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or you may text them at 988. Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Leslie Dilbeck. We want to welcome you back to a new episode of White Knuckling Through Life. I know it's been a little bit since we've last recorded and posted, but we've been kind of busy. I think work has picked up quite a bit. So we are super excited to kind of just spend some time together. I'm here with Diann Cohen, my co-host, and we're going to revisit what we've talked about and talk a little bit about what we've learned. So Diann, why don't you kind of give us a little bit of a recap of what we've done, what we've heard, what we've, kind of presented over the last several episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first episode, of course, was just me and Leslie talking like we are today. But our second one was about mental illness, and Leslie's daughter, Danica, was more than happy to share her story, which is really very brave of her. Then we had my son, Jacob, on, and Jacob talked about drug abuse and alcohol abuse and how, he was able to overcome that. Then we had Dr. Amanda come online, and she was talking to us about brand new treatment for alcoholism, and they have a program very similar to that for opioids. We went into somewhat of a recovery with something called Reboot with Roy Harrington, and he talked about that program. And I think it's such a great program for so many people. And I think we got a little story to tell about both of that. Then we had Herb talk to us about youth PTSD and how he was able to overcome it. It took about 5 years. We had Angie talk about suicide. And then with suicide, for her family, it was the stigma in her own family because they're Asian and what that meant. So they were trying to overcome two things: the hurt of somebody passing, and then of course the stigma that their Asian culture put on suicide. And then we had your friend Jennifer on, who talked about having a massive stroke. I mean, to hear her story was amazing, from having to learn to do absolutely everything over. And then we spoke to Dr. Annika, and Dr. Annika talked about why so many people could be so resilient and how we can become more resilient. Because oftentimes I think, have a tendency to want to self-isolate and cocoon when things happen to us. But she talked about how we can be resilient, what we can do, and that was really fantastic. So why don't we kind of update on some of these. So maybe you could tell us about your daughter and what's going on with Danica.
Yeah. So she finally, had the opportunity to share her story when we recorded our episode. And that was a very big, brave move for her. And I know it was scary, and we talked a lot about it before and a lot about it after. I do want to mention that my husband just listened to it for the first time 2 weeks ago. And he was just very, he didn't want to listen to it because it brought up a lot of emotions. It was very hard to listen to. It was very hard to record it and put ourselves out there and be vulnerable, but she's doing really well. She's had a couple of, really bad things that have happened recently, not horribly life-changing, but for her and the stuff that she deals with on a mental health level, even the smallest thing can be a disruptor for her.
Mm-hmm.
So all in 1 week, she got put in a not the best job assignment. She got a nail in her tire, and then we were working out at the gym, and she went out to her car, and her backpack with her laptop and Beats and everything were stolen. And we talked about it. She was crying. I mean, she's like, I don't have the money to replace any of that. That was like the tip, just tipped everything over when all that stuff got stolen. And she goes, at least now I have the ability to, I'm going to cry over it, but I'm not going to go into this deep depression because of it. I will, be okay and all this. So that was a good little insight to see where she is, because I think Diann, is we've talked about in the past, when it comes to our children, I think sometimes we want to look for those markers or like those indicators, like, are they doing well? Are they not doing well? I can't ask her every single time I see her, how's your mental health doing? That's just not helpful to her. And it's not healthy for me to always be asking that. And so just seeing how she deals with her own life circumstances, good or bad, has been interesting to watch. And this couple weeks ago experience was a good insight to, she's okay. She'll always be struggling with it, but she has the tools to overcome it. And we've had some good feedback from the session that we recorded, and had many people reach out and just appreciate that she was able to be vulnerable and share and be, who she is, and recognize it and feel empowered to help other people with those same issues. So that's the update on my girl.
Well, I'm glad to hear that she's, doing well and she's able to cope and manage. That is so phenomenal. As a parent, we just delight in hearing that.
Yeah. How's
So
Jake
my son,
doing? I know that was our second episode. Jacob.
yes. Yeah. So Jacob, it was interesting. So Jacob finished college last year and he went to work for a place called the Salmon Center, where they revive salmon habitats.
Oh, wow.
And so he really loved that job. He's since moved on, and he was really feeling great because he went to work for 2 days one week and then 5 days the second week, and they gave him a raise. They were so happy with him. And so he's really pleased that, his life is turning around and he's able to do more. I have to say that you were mentioning it's not good for you to keep talking to your daughter and asking her these questions, because it just brings it up all the time. It used to be for us, every time I saw my son, I would sniff, but right, I would smell, look, see if I could smell any alcohol, smell any drugs on him. And not too long ago, he was in my kitchen and I happened to give him a hug. And while I was hugging him, I sniffed, but not, I just happened to be sniffing. And my son starts laughing so hard. He's like, Mom, it has been so long since I heard you sniff. It's just like,
How funny.
it's just like, it's so wonderful that that's not part of our daily life anymore, because it used to be. But something really cool happened after Jake's episode. A nurse listened to the episode, and she was talking to a clinic examiner who was dealing with somebody who had alcoholism, and they needed him obviously to get clean, I think surgery or something. I don't remember all the specifics, but the examiner was really frustrated because she felt that this person should be doing something different. And the nurse was able to say, hey, I just listened to a young man on a podcast, and the story that he shared was that, not, AA doesn't work for everybody. Certain programs don't work for everybody. He's got to, and you need to be encouraging. And she actually quoted Jacob 3 times. So I was really happy that his story was able to help somebody that, none of us know. It's just an injured worker in the industry. And now this examiner was asked to listen to the podcast so she could have more empathy. And I think she did. So that was really cool about that.
I love that, hearing that. The feedback we've been getting is good too. And I've even gotten some, I was having breakfast yesterday with my family, and I was talking about us recording this upcoming episode. And I was talking to somebody that had shared my daughter's episode, and I think the ones following it, whose husband had committed suicide. And the person that had listened to my daughter's episode had pause and reservations, because my daughter was saying that when she was in treatment, that when, they were talking about, she was talking about her suicidal ideation, the therapist was like, that's not an option. That's not an option. And so my daughter held on to that and just would tell herself, that's not even on the option, the list of things that are going to do to resolve my problem. And the woman suffering from the loss of her husband didn't understand that. And I appreciate that feedback, because back to just like with the AA or treatment for substance use disorder or mental health issues. What works for one person may not work for another. And we have to be gracious with each other on that and know that there are many people that might find, the solutions that Jake has provided in talking about his recovery, or my daughter talking about overcoming some of the mental health issues, might be beneficial to them. But if you're listening to this and those aren't working for you, there's still so much more out there. And so I encourage people to just keep talking, to look and explore different options, because it's not all the stuff we're talking about is not one size fits all, but it's just ideas and stories that will show you that it is something that can be overcome, whether it be trauma, substance use, mental health issues. Doesn't mean it always goes away. It just means that it will help you overcome it and live life despite it. So thank you
No,
for bringing that up, because I think, yeah, the Jake getting that positive feedback, that's that one person listened to that. That's all I needed to do with that episode, right?
right, exactly. So that made me think of a woman that I know that son died and she was just paralyzed by it. And her friend said, let's just go out and let's just do a jog, right? Let's just walk, let's just do something. And she had to literally move herself back into life. And I think that's a really important lesson, that if we just stay in our cocoon, where it's going to be much harder to break through. So please, if you're listening to this, just keep moving, right? Find something to do so that you can find what it is that will help you past this, because there is something. There is something.
And I think
So
Dr. Hofschneider did talk about that in the resiliency episode we did, right? She talked about some of those tools that people need to just move past whatever the issue is that they're dealing with. I mean, she deals with people that have traumatic injuries, that they're like in a rehab facility, needing to learn to walk again or talk again or whatever it may be. And so one of the resiliency pieces is just like, despite the maybe the desire just to lay in bed and throw the cover on top of you and ignore the rest of the world, is even just that small step. Whatever, go take a shower, go call a friend, text a friend. Sometimes you have to feel a little bit uncomfortable to get past the pain of whatever it is you're dealing with. So yes, I
yeah,
thank you for that.
boy, if you haven't listened to that episode, it was very, very good. So Dr. and she talked about a new method for alcoholism, which I so wish that that was around when Jacob was dealing with his issues, because I really believe in this program. I believed in this program so much that I made sure that it came to our industry, the workers' compensation industry, and we spoke at 3 different conferences: the Executive and Workers' Comp. Then we spoke at the California Association of Self-Insureds, and then we were invited to speak at the National Self-Insureds Association in Denver, Colorado. So we were on a road trip for a couple months doing this, because I just so believe in this program so much. And it was lovely that after they heard our program, they wanted to hear it at other conferences. And I just think it's going to help so many people. It's such a great.
Love that. It was such an outside the box option for recovery. She was giving all the statistics and talking about how, COVID ramped up alcohol sales, and the stay-at-home moms were having more of a problem, or maybe coming to terms with a problem that was there, that they just a spotlight came on it just because now everybody's all in the home, and having the opportunity to do part of the treatment through VR, instead of having to go to a meeting where people might know you or might not know you, but hey, you might see the person from your church at a AA meeting or something like that. So it was another option, as we learned with Jacob. Not that AA is bad or anything like that. It does work for some people, but Jacob finds his it sounds like his healing and his recovery in nature, and doing those things that fill him up that way. And what Dr. Amanda shared, her program was excellent. I didn't even know it existed. So I want to thank you for, you always find, you like dig up these little things. And I'm like, where did you hear about that? So I always so think, I always tell people, I go, if the guy, the most interesting man in the world, Dos Equis guy, you should be the most interesting woman in the world, because you just know so many people and you've had so many experiences. And so I always look forward to hear who you found next to bring to this community of people that are listening to these stories and these podcasts.
Well, thank you. I'm fortunate that, we have this platform and I can talk to people, and, their stories resonate with me. And so it's easy to invite them to our podcast, because we want healing for everybody. So I'm going to have a beer after this, though. Then we had Herb on, and Herb was very interesting because his story was about youth trauma, right?
Oh yeah.
And he talks about the PTSD that was associated with his father being assassinated. And not everybody's father is going to be assassinated, but they can be killed or murdered or have a heart attack or something, and leave this earth way too early. And I think we oftentimes think that kids are just resilient, but the mark that losing a parent has on a child is really very deep and very painful. So it was really good to hear that story about how, time and other things can really help heal that wound.
It was interesting to hear from him that he really didn't come to terms with it till later in life. It was almost like when his dad was assassinated, they were in another country. He was really put in a position to kind of be a parent. So, to his brother, and help his mom with all the details of what, getting back to the US. And it was just sounded like he just didn't even have time to really grieve. He just was put in a go mode, and really figured out a lot of this stuff kind of a little bit later in life, not immediate. What I'm saying is, like, that same year didn't go and get the help he needed. And so that just goes to show that people carry wounds with them, sometimes far longer than they need to, and the wounds can't heal until they get treated, right? It's just like if you have a big cut on your arm and you choose not to clean it out and put some, Neosporin on it and a Band-Aid, and make sure, it doesn't get infected. Those deep wounds that happen from trauma have that same, just think of it in that same way. Use that analogy that you have to treat it. You have to make sure it doesn't get infected with other things that, some people will infect it with alcoholism. Some people will infect it with just a negative outlook on life. And so it's refreshing to hear his story. And he is just such, if you listen to that episode, find him on LinkedIn and connect with him, because he puts a lot of really good content on there that's very inspiring. And I know that the people that work for him just think he's a treasure. He is so good to his employees. So I just mentioned that, that's the word on the street, and I appreciated his story. Now, we also had Reboot. We had Roy come on.
Yes.
That was interesting. Why don't you just kind of recap what Reboot is? And then I have a little funny anecdotal story about that.
So what Reboot is, it's a program to help people who have had some type of trauma in their life. It could be any trauma. So it's not just what somebody would consider like a military-based trauma. It could be any trauma at all. And what they do is they have a 12-week program where everybody gets together and they have a meal together before the meeting. They sit, they visit, they talk with each other, they get to know each other. And then they have this 12-week series of topics that they do. Now, I have to say, I know you have a story, but my son has since gone through Reboot and has said it was really very beneficial, and that Roy and his wife Noodle really did an amazing job with the program. And at first he didn't understand that whole eating thing first, he's kind of like, let's get to business. Let's just get it done,
Yeah,
right?
he didn't want to have the time of communion.
Right, exactly. But once he started doing it, he understood why they do it. I mean, you get to know these people, you get to like them, you're more willing to open up in front of them and, discuss your issues. And one gentleman said, my issue is very minor compared to everybody else's. And Jacob said, man, I don't think I could survive your issue. I survived mine, but I couldn't survive yours. And the gentleman's issue was he had adopted a daughter. And as the daughter got older, she turned her back and said, I want nothing to do with you.
Mm.
And so, he raised a daughter and wasn't able to have have. So Jacob was, just like, I don't know why you would say that my trauma is more devastating than yours, because so many people would not be able to survive yours. So
Yeah.
it was very, very interesting. But let's talk about your story, because that was really cool.
Yeah, so just full disclosure, our biggest fan, I know we have probably thousands of fans for our podcast,
Yeah.
is my 82-year-old mother-in-law, Nancy. And she's actually an interesting gal too. But she listens to every episode, and then she'll text me, oh, that was so good, or this or that. Oh, I didn't know this. And so after the reboot episode, she was telling me, I'm going to tell our church we need to have this. And I said, all right, girl, go for it. It's, there's the website and all this. And so that next Sunday, she went to church and she was going to tell somebody they needed to start this reboot. And right there in the announcements of the bulletin was they were having the reboot. So she ended up signing up for it, went through the program, and, she's 82 years old. She's probably got a lifetime of adverse events that have happened to her, and she's just an amazing woman. She's actually a pastor. She became she went through the studies to become ordained. Anyway, she was a missionary in Costa Rica and all these different things. And I thought, gosh, so I asked her, I go, so you're 80 and some change. Did you have trauma? She says, well, when I went in there, I didn't think I had trauma, but then as I began talking, I started to realize, well, I lost my mom and my sister all in the same year, and I was a teenager, and it was very sad. It was a very sad thing for me, and it was a big, huge loss, but I just had to keep chugging along, help with my dad and all this stuff. And it just shows you that you're never too old to dig deep and really explore why you are the way you are, who you are, and what caused you to be the way you are. And I think reboot helps with that, but also gets people to move past it and have tools to move forward and enjoy and have a meaningful life that will not be free of problems or challenges, but in a way that you can do it so that you're fulfilled.
Yes.
You're thriving. You're not just surviving. And we talk a lot about that in our house. And I talk a lot about it, with my mother-in-law. She's just getting older, and there's things that aren't the way she wants them to be. And I'm sure I'll be right there when I'm her age. And it's like, well, what are we going to do to thrive at this moment in time? So that's my little story. She went to, and I think she's even going to be like a facilitator for it or something. She got all dialed in on that. She's awesome.
I think that's great. And it's a lovely way to be able to give back when you've had something so positive in your life. If you've gone through the program, it really helped you to be able to help other people go through that journey and have more classes available. That is really cool. So then we had Angie on, and Angie actually works with Herb. And that's how I met Angie. I met Herb first, and then I met Angie afterwards. And Angie and I have become quick friends. We have done many programs together, and she's a pretty amazing woman. She actually, one of her passions, and she didn't talk about this, is she has working dogs. So she has like mental health dogs and assistant dogs that she takes to elderly facilities, convalescent homes, to other places that people need therapy dogs. And that is one of her passions. So if she's your friend on Facebook, you could see where she takes her dogs. It's really a cool thing that she does. And her issue when she was speaking with us was, suicide in the family, the effect that it had. This story, she told us her mother's story, and the complications of her family's culture and what suicide meant in an Asian family. And of course, everybody is traumatized, but then you have this extra pressure of, culture,
Yeah.
and so it really slows down the healing process when you have multiple layers like that.
Yeah, it was helpful too for her situation to be able to have her background and knowledge to help her family member that was really suffering with, like, could I do that too? Would I ever get to a point that I could do that to myself? Just the her family member that was a survivor, not the one that committed suicide, was just having a hard time grappling with it and had struggled with it for a while. And she came alongside her and Angie provided that expertise and that help. And we don't all have that, in our families, but there's always resources available to you. And it was helpful to Angie as she worked with her loved one through that process to understand also the cultural implications. And that's something that we don't, I know about it because I'm Latin, Mexican American, and there's similar things in our culture that are just not talked about or really not given the same weight as maybe, oh, somebody's diagnosed with cancer. So I
Mhm.
can see how that is. And as we learn more and gain more knowledge and know how to communicate better about what the conditions are and how to navigate healing and treatment for those in a way that's understandable through those different cultures, I think is helpful. That might be a new program that needs to be set up. It probably already is. I always think of really great ideas like Shark Tank or something like that, and then I go, oh, it's already been invented. Anyhow, research it, Google it. So then after Angie, we had my friend Jennifer Delamore come on, and she's one of my heroes, my real life heroes, having survived stroke, a major stroke, like to the point that she's surprised that she's still alive. And we talked about her recovery process, and it was not just a physical recovery process. It was also mentally being able to recover from deep depression of what she had lost and the grief that she had to go through to mourn her past life, the life pre-stroke, the life of being able to be financially secure and having a career and being able to be independent, not dependent on other people. Just a little update on her. She is so stinking resilient. She got engaged after, many years after this stroke had happened. Her engagement is recent. She is thriving, and I'm sad to have to tell you guys this, that her mom last month in June of 2022, she passed away. She ended up having a ruptured artery and a brain bleed, and it's just tragic and scary and horrible. And I'm sure that Jennifer is having to revisit some of the trauma that she had from the medical event she had, being very similar to what her mom sustained. So if you have whatever your means is, either think it good thoughts. I'm more of a prayer type gal. Send your prayers her way. She's now out there and able, I will say, to go through her mom's things and help with the process of her mom's passing and all that goes along with that. So
So
that
her mom was a really big part of her
her
recovery.
mom moved
If
out
it
to
wasn't for her
California,
mom,
right? So,
yeah.
I don't know why things happen. I can't make sense of a lot of things. That one really took my breath away, and I felt just so sad for her. But I think, well, she was able to have that time with her mom during her recovery, and I'm sure that brought them even more close than they had already been. And thankfully, Jennifer was in a healthy state in her recovery from her stroke to be able to go out there and take care of her mom's affairs. And that, And she has a partner. She has a person alongside her to help her through that. And I don't know anything else to say other than just, if you just pray for her or think good thoughts. She is quite the overcomer. And that leads me to
Well,
resiliency.
I would like to say one thing though,
Oh, yeah.
during that podcast, I did not share at the time that my father had a massive stroke and was locked in his body afterwards. So half his body didn't work any longer, and he was not able to speak anymore. But he was wicked smart, and you could tell things were going on, but he couldn't get them out. And there were a few times he was able to conjure up enough words, but few and far between. And mostly the time that he did it was that he wanted to die.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
it was amazing to hear her ability to recover. I was so happy for her.
Yeah, I was, watching her go through her recovery. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it and go through it all again, but I am thinking of what Jake said, that person in Reboot was saying, well, I don't, or, Jake, I don't know if I could handle your trauma or your trauma. We can't compare because you never know what you are capable of until you have to go through it. And you had to make some very hard decisions when it came to your dad, and
Yes.
seeing that and seeing that person struggling like that. And there were times with Jennifer, like she could hear what they were saying and she's like, hello, I'm in here. I just can't get the word out. I know you think I'm in a coma right now, but I can hear you saying I'm probably not going to make it. And I can't even fathom what that's like. I can only appreciate the way our bodies are, our minds and our bodies, and what we're capable of doing, and knowing when we need to release ourselves from that. And your dad, was at a place that he felt probably I need to be released from this. I know we had to say goodbye to my stepdad in 2020, and he was suffering so much. And once we could tell him he could go, he left.
Yeah.
He was able to release it, knowing we were going to all be okay. And it's just an interesting thing, a phenomenon. I've read a lot about it. It's an interesting thing.
Yes. Well, now we got Dr. Annika, right?
I know Dr. Annika Snyder. She's just the cutest little thing. I just think she's lovely. And I appreciated everything she had to say. I was like, I just got a free therapy session. She was on. Note to self, I need to do that. And this is full disclosure, when she was on, I was struggling. I have been struggling this last maybe 9 months. I'm just in a funk. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's, to be honest, perimenopause, if it's having to all of a sudden be back into traveling again and just on a high speed schedule, just totally packed. If it's that, if it's some things that I'm dealing with my mom, or I don't know what, but I'm in a funk. I don't want to say I'm depressed, but just hearing some of the things she said helped me just with what I'm going through. And I think that's important to remember, that in your workplace, even in under your own roof, people can be going through all varying degrees of whatever. I call it funk. You call it whatever you want to call it, you can call it. And we have to be gracious with each other in that. And it's not like I'm asking, let's say my husband, oh, please solve my problem of my funk, right? It's not that. It's more, hey, I'm in a funk, just FYI. That's why I might be off, or why I might not be as, I don't know what the word would be. I
think being self-aware is so amazing. My son is the most self-aware person I know. And I'm always impressed when he tells me things. I'm like, I'm not sure I would have dialed into that. I'm a pretty smart woman. I am. Yeah. But I don't think I have that same ability to be so self-aware. And I really admire that in people like you who are able to at least address it in advance.
Yeah, I think
That is awesome.
it's just skill. It's just something that once I think you have it. You just don't know that you really are awesome at it. And I think that once you dial in and almost like verbalize it or diary it or just acknowledge it, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, that's what that is. And that's what I loved about almost all these episodes, just with people being vulnerable and owning, who they are, why they are the way they are, where they're at in life, and how they got there. And everybody that is listening to this has that. There's
Yeah.
we are who we are because of our life experiences. And I think that's what Dr. Hofschneider talked about, is just that people's experiences kind of bring them where they're at and also can help them through their resiliency. And once
True.
you know it, you have faith that you can get through it again. And so me being in my funk, what I learned from her was that, okay, yeah, I'm in my funk and I know I've gotten through it before. I'm not just going to be like, oh, I'm just going to stop exercise. I'm just going to be like, blah, in life, I'm going to just get through it, know what I need to do, and be open about it. And that's sometimes hard to do, because it might be just easier just to isolate. Back to what you were saying at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're isolating, you don't have to explain yourself to anybody or feel like you need to put on a happy face when you don't feel like doing that. So we learn a lot from these episodes, and I feel fooled up to the brim when after we record and I listen to them again, I get little insights. And I think that is one of the things our audience appreciates, is that they're able to take the information. Some of it might be useful, not all of it, but probably there's at least a little pearl in each one of these that might be helpful to you. Do you have any?
I just want to share one thing here. One of the things you mentioned, our audience, we're so new at this. We're marketing it ourselves, really not in a lot of places. We're just doing the best we can and sharing our story. And the other day I heard that somebody had listened to our podcast in Hawaii.
That's right. That had nothing to do with us. Like, wasn't like somebody that was our friend that we said, hey, you need to listen to this. It was like I don't know how they got it or how it ended up coming about. I think I don't know, the hashtags or whatever. My son does all that stuff. So whatever the keywords are.
Right, exactly. So I just thought that was neat. And maybe one day, Leslie, we will have a true big audience and be able to really, I really want to help people. And I think, in closing, that's my point, is I would love to be able to help people. And we hope the stories that we bring to you, the people we bring to you, are something or someone that can help inspire you to reach out, to grab that brass ring and move forward, because that's really the most important thing, is that we're moving forward and we're being, walking into life so that we can help with our recovery.
Thank you for that. Well, in closing, want to say, the only way the message gets out is by you sharing it, liking it, following it, sharing it again, spreading the word. The other piece of it is creating content that's valuable and meaningful to you. We've kind of procured the content, the guests on our own, but if you have a story to share, I'm going to be giving you my email address, Leslie, LESLIE_Dilbeck, DILBECK @yahoo.com. Please send me your story and I will forward it to Diann and we'll be in touch with you. If you think you have something that's hopeful, a story of resilience, an overcoming story, something like that, or a program, or like with Dr. Amanda, a reboot, a solution to some of these challenges we face in our lives, please share that with us. So I'm going to leave you with the same thing I leave you with every time. Remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and sprinkle it everywhere like glitter. We hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day or night or morning or whenever you're listening to this, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.